Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, and welcome to a bit of a short discussion video today on just some things that I want to watch out for and keep in mind for this LCS number 10, aka the 3v3 that's happening this weekend. I will be uploading videos later to the channel on just some future matches as the day progresses, so be on the lookout for those. But yeah, this is just going to be some concepts and just some general trends I've been observing over the past couple of weeks here, and I do want to see if they culminate in this tournament. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. Not really going to have too much of a script other than some notes that you'll see on screen, so want to just get my point across and keep this video relatively short. So the first thing is going to be the debate between hand traps versus board breakers. And personally, I'm of the opinion that hand traps are just generally a lot more effective. When it comes down to it, the best decks in the format are going to be Virtual World and Drytron by a pretty significant margin. And those are obviously combo decks, so you really do need to just play cards so that you don't auto lose, especially if you're in a combo mirror. And I think backward decks are in a very tough position at the moment where they have to try and break boards, but it's harder to do so if they don't play hand traps because hand traps are the cards that are going to deny them resources when they get to go first. And then they still have to win the grind game, which isn't even guaranteed because these combo decks are very much well known for having resources past turn one. So at the end of the day, I really do think that hand traps are going to reign supreme, especially when you take into account the fact that board breakers are really awkward, especially against VW. And I'm going to put a bit of a spoiler here. I do think VW is the better deck between that and Drytron, but you have cards like Droplet, which get nullified by Chuche, and then, Dark Ruler is also kind of awkward because, it just doesn't do anything against a shotgun VFD. So it's pretty tough to kind of justify these cards. Whereas, you have hand traps that are universally applicable and just wide and varied in their approach. Ash is one of the most popular hand traps right now. It has a pretty decent win rate, and it's probably just the best game one hand trap that also hits rogue decks as well. So like even in those matchups, you're fine off playing hand traps. And then you have other cards, like Gamma, which are still pretty good at just being able to have a lot of versatility. So I think that these are the cards that people are going to trend towards as this tournament kind of progresses here. And then we'll look at more of the micro interactions a bit later. But yeah, the format kind of develops into a point where I think hand traps are just going to be needed. The second thing I want to talk about is sort of the Virtual World versus Drytron sort of war that's happening, right? Which deck's the better deck? Which deck do you think will take it? I already mentioned this earlier, but I do think Virtual World is the better deck at the moment. It was Drytron, I think, as the early front runner, as people were kind of like trying to solve the deck, both in terms of piloting it and in terms of finding ways to actually craft strategies to beat it. But I think people have adapted and adjusted extremely well and extremely quickly at that. If this tournament was happening 3 to 4 weeks ago, I think Drytron probably would have taken it. But now we have things like, main deck Droll or obviously Cycle Reader and just better timings on the more popular hand traps as well. Cards like Ash, Bell, and Meister. People understand, if they open, Drytron minus the Ben 10, and if it's alpha, then you definitely just, stop them from getting Ben 10 access pretty much. So with people understanding how to use their hand traps better, I think it's going to be a lot tougher for Drytron to play, even in a game one scenario, especially against a well-prepared opponent who's on either the mirror or Virtual World. Whereas Virtual World, in the meantime, hasn't changed at all, but also it's just been optimized even further. We have a lot of really cool combos with Constellar Ptolemy M7, which can recycle resources. Like you can dump things like Lulu or Lala, add them back, or just recycle hand traps, and that is a really strong kind of mechanic in itself. You have, of course, the Vermilion and Shalfeng plays that are still really, really good. People just know how to put up either number 75 or just hold Lao to play around like Nibiru and stuff too. So I think people are really just getting a lot smarter with Virtual World. So that's going to be another aspect as to why I think that deck is going to overall perform a lot better. And it's a lot harder as well to find just the auto win cards against VW, right? Because against Drytron, you can afford to play some go second cards that are sort of those auto wins like Droplet or Dark Ruler or whatever. But VW, again, doesn't really have that kind of weakness inherently, aside from just trying to actually stop it from popping off to begin with. So overall, I think this points to the fact that VW will probably take more top cut spots than Drytron, and I'm expecting it to win the event. But we'll just have to wait and see. This is just my prediction, though. And then the final thing is going to be the Ally of Justice Cycle Reader specifically. So this is a very interesting card that I want to talk about because obviously it's an answer to Drytron and it's what people have been talking about quite a lot. It has super high impact and it's especially good if you're playing a slower deck, which I already mentioned aren't the greatest decks like in terms of just playing back row at the moment. But if you are playing a slower control deck, then this is definitely the card you want to turn to as opposed to something like Joel because it actually removes resources if you're playing a deck that can't capitalize on like say an OTK potential off of Joel. But Virtual World actually can search this card. So some people might be taking in a copy of Orcus Crescendo to send off a Foolish Burial Goods because you can banish it during your opponent's draw phase to search Cycle Reader. They also have Shalfeng, which can search any tuner, not just the Lelo. So if they have their combo, they can actually just go and search Cycle Reader and then Cloud Castle this back, and then they have VFD and Cycle Reader, and it's really hard to beat. So I think that the fact that Virtual World already has been trending upwards, but now has these tools to literally just search out one of Drytron's biggest, biggest kryptonites, it's just going to be a recipe for Virtual World success, in my opinion, if players are still, on these cards and Drytron hasn't really adapted. But speaking of which, if Drytron can adapt to beat Cycle Reader, then this can be pretty good. One of the best ways to do so is by playing Call by the Grave, of course, but that's a one-of. Other options would include Ghost Spell, which I think is pretty solid, obviously negating the Cycle Reader is strong. And then you have possibly Instant Fusion for Millenniumize Restrict. It's hard, again, because it's another one-of. So the answers to Cycle Reader are very, very fewer and far between, whereas VW can still afford to play other cards that are answers, like to double up with Cycle Readers so they can still play Joel and things. And it's just super hard to account for all these different answers at once. And I think Cycle Reader is also one of the reasons why, the Aqua Dolphin kind of fell off of the map in terms of just a way to answer hand traps, because Cycle Reader has 1,000 attack. And so the question is going to be, will this cause players to shift away from Drytron, and thus will it actually render Cycle Reader to be a worse card than it would have been previously? And the answer is a maybe. If enough people shift away from Drytron and, expecting a lot of people just over prepare for the deck, that might end up just kind of causing a cycle where, okay, if nobody's playing Drytron, then why do we play Cycle Reader? But then if Cycle Reader leaves the format, then, oh, we should be playing Drytron. It becomes kind of that push and pull, kind of similar to a lot of other cards and interactions in the format. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. I did want to keep this a bit shorter, so I do want to thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, definitely leave a like, as well as any thoughts or feedback in the comment section down below. Feel free to subscribe for more informative and creative Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you want to, you can follow me on all social media platforms or support me via Patreon TCG Player. All the links in the description as usual. And until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys.